Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning into another edition of Canada Files. I'm Jim Deeks, and in our ongoing effort to be relevant, we're pleased to welcome Larry O'Reilly as our guest on this episode. Now, you may not know Larry, but he's had an exemplary and enviable career based here in Toronto as the person probably most responsible for building out the global network of IMAX film projection, which is, of course, the international pinnacle for watching movies and documentaries in ultra-large movie screens, and more recently as a pioneer in the practical development of holography, which we'll explain in further detail. But before we get started, I should explain to you that for one of the very first times in broadcast television, our guest will be appearing on stage with me as a hologram. So, Larry O'Reilly, are you there? Yes, you are there, my goodness. So what do you actually say to a hologram? Welcome to the set, can I get you a coffee? What do you say?
You say what, well, you say what you normally would say, because you should feel like I'm right there next to you, even though I'm not.
Well, let's just be clear. I can see you, of course, and so can our audience, but can you see me from where you are?
Absolutely. So I can see you're wearing a lovely vest and a blue shirt and a great check jacket.
Well, thank you so much. And I can see you, but you are in a different part of the building. And you're coming across about as clearly as you possibly could. Could you also be in London or Singapore or Buenos Aires?
Absolutely. In fact, I have days where I take a couple of meetings in London, and then I beam into New York and do a few meetings in New York, and then I beam into Los Angeles and maybe do a meeting or two there, and I might finish my day in either Hong Kong or Singapore. I've not even left Toronto.
That's fascinating. We'll discuss the science and the applications of holography in a moment, but I want to actually go back to an earlier part of your career when you were with IMAX. I'm just wondering if you always wanted to be in the technology business, particularly as it relates to film and projection, rear screen or otherwise. Was that a career that you wanted to get into?
Actually, I really hadn't thought about it. I came into IMAX slightly by accident. I was a fan of movies, and I was contemplating a career change, and I was thinking maybe movies, maybe sports, maybe something in entertainment. And my wife and I were down at Ontario Place watching Rolling Stones at the Max, and it absolutely blew my mind. I felt like I was on stage with Keith and Mick and the band, and I turned to my wife and I said, I've got to work for this company. And 6 months later I was.
Well, you know, for those of us in our audience who aren't aware of IMAX, it's actually a technology that is quite complicated, but it's very different from what we would all know as vertical film projection. No point in going into the minutiae of what it involves, but as a technology, it was invented in Canada in 1967. It was introduced at the Seattle World's Fair in 1970. The first IMAX single-purpose theater was introduced in Toronto in 1971. Today, as I understand it, there are more than 1,500 IMAX theaters in 80 countries. What was your role in helping to build out that whole footprint?
Well, my role in building out the footprint really was as president of worldwide sales, but when I joined IMAX, I actually started in the film group. So I was distributing Rolling Stones at the Max and Titanica and a couple of other titles that we had at the time. But we had a business issue, and the business issue was we had a consumer experience that people absolutely loved, but the business model was broken. And so we had to come up with a plan B. And the plan B was, at the time, the only place you could see 3D in a theater was at an IMAX theater. A couple of locations, one in Montreal and one in Galveston, Texas.